A very good afternoon to all of you. I hope that you all have come back after your lunch. Uh, I'm requesting Reena, Dr. Reena Talwar. Dr. Reena Talwar.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you're not audible.
Good afternoon, Dr. Mohd Adil. I hope you're fine.
Good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, Reena. Okay, Reena, just you can introduce.
Dr. Reena. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah, good afternoon and welcome to Dr. Mohammed Adil sir. We will start first, the introduction will complete. Dr. Reena Talwar, am I audible to you, beta? Dr. Reena Talwar.
ठिकाना डायल किया गया नंबर अभी व्यस्त ठिकाना डायल किया गया नंबर
Maybe she has some issue. We are waiting for one more minute, else we will start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible? Okay. I welcome you all to the next session, which is on mediation and moderation by Dr. Mohammed Adil. So I welcome you, sir, and all the participants to this session. Before I hand over to you, sir, let me give you just a brief introduction about you to the participants. Dr. Mohammed Adil works as assistant professor in the Department of Management Studies, NIT Hamidpur. After completing his MBA, he has done PhD from Aligarh Muslim University. He is a recipient of prestigious fellowships from University Grants Commission India, and he has several publications in top journals, ABDC index journals, and presented various papers in international and national conferences that includes American Marketing Association, IIM Ahmedabad, Calcutta, Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and many such prestigious institutes. He's also on the reviewers panel of reputed A-grade journals and has reviewed chapters for research methodology book called as Business Research Methods, and it is published by Cooper and Schindler McGraw-Hill. Dr. Mohammed Adil has been recently awarded with 2 patents by the Commissioner of Government, IP Australian government, for his contribution to the research work. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of faculty of School of Management and Business Studies, Jamia Hamdard. And without wasting any more time, I hand over to you, sir, and look forward for a fruitful and interactive session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And in fact, I congratulate the university as well as the department for organizing a workshop, FDP rather, on structural equation modeling, which is quite relevant. Relevant in a sense that if we minutely observe some of the recent publications that are appearing in top tier journal, so we will realize the fact that yes, most of those publications either revolve around mediation or moderations or both. So in that sense, it becomes more relevant to understand the concept of mediation and moderation. Uh, can I upload my PPT? Yeah, present now. Okay. Is it visible? My screen is visible?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, mediation and moderation. Uh, so as I said that recent most if you try to analyze some recent publications, that's true in top tier journals, we will realize that yes, there is a surge in those studies which revolves around mediation and moderation. So just giving you a backdrop of mediation and moderation as to when this started and something like that. So if we look at the historical evolution of mediation and moderation, so 1981 to 1990, there were only 43 studies that were actually in psychology and social sciences that used to revolve around mediation and moderation. Slowly and gradually, we saw that there is an increase in the studies. So in 1991 to 2000, we saw that there are 5 times increase in what we used to have during 1980 and 1990. So 221 studies. Similarly, next decade, that is 2001 to 2010, we saw that 539 studies. That's true in psychology and social science. They had either used mediation or moderation or both. But interesting point here is that during 2010 to 2015, that is within 5 years, we saw that there is say there is a surge in the studies, and that's to somewhere around 2,598, close to 2,600 studies that has started working in and around mediation or moderation or either both. So giving you this backdrop, it means that since we are actually working in social sciences and especially in management, so the phenomena keeps on changing very fast. We have certain independent variables. We at times we have dependent variables, and then we try to find out the relationship between the independent and dependent. But gone are the days when yeah.
Professor, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, before we jump on the understanding on the conceptual say understanding of mediation and moderation, it is quite pertinent that we must have understanding of the some of the key terms that we are going to come across during the whole presentation. uh, Obviously, you might have gone through structural equation modeling, so most of these terms you are well versed with. So directly talking about the indicators, so indicators are nothing but directly measured observations, or in other words, we can also call it as items. Then we have endogenous constructs. Constructs are nothing latent multi-item equivalent to dependent variables. And endogenous in structural equation modeling, or say in mediation and moderation, we basically refer it to the dependent variable. Then we have endogenous latent variables. Similarly, we have exogenous constructs, exogenous latent variables, and explained variance. Explained variance is a measure of the proportion of the variance, which is being explained in endogenous constructs by the predictor constructs. And as long as we are dealing with mediation, obviously there will be some direct effect, indirect effect. So indirect effects are those relationships that involve a sequence of relationships with at least one intervening construct involved. I'm not explaining all these terms. I'm just giving you a glimpse of these terms just because I'm going to explain all these terms whenever we are dealing with mediation and moderation. So now next is the direct effect. Direct effects are the relationship between two constructs with a single arrow. It simply means that we have one independent variable, one we have dependent variable, and then there is we are trying to establish a relationship between independent and dependent. So direct effects are those relationships wherein we have only two constructs with a single arrow. Next, we have mediating effect or mediation model or mediator variable. So this is actually a situation in which one or more mediator variables facilitate the explanation of the relationships between two other variables or constructs. Similarly, we have moderating effect, or you can call it moderation, or you can call it moderator effect or moderator variable. It occurs when the effect of one latent variable on another latent variable depends on the value of a third variable, which is referred to as a moderator variable. So these are some of the key terms that we are going to come across during our next presentation. So starting with the basic concepts of mediation. So in a very simple, in a very layman manner, we try to understand as to what mediation is. So a mediation has been defined as an effect which is being created when a third variable or the construct intervenes between two other related constructs. Let me start the highlighter. Okay, so here it says that when a third variable. So what does it mean? It simply means that we have only two variables, one here, and this is called endogenous, this is called exogenous. In other words, this is independent, this is dependent, and then we are trying to introduce a third variable. Now, the basic question will arise as to why there is a need to introduce a third variable. Because at times the life is not so simple. The real scenario is not so simple. It's quite complicated. So at times we need more number of variables to explain as to why something is happening, to answer why, to answer how. If I say that independent influences dependent, then why it is influencing? Okay, why it is influencing, and how this is transforming this one. If it happens to be a transformation, then we'll be more eager to know as to why this transformation is taking place. So when we try to answer why, when we try to answer how, so in that case we need more number of variables. Yeah. So so for a variable to qualify as a potential mediator, so I hope this thing is clear. The very basic concept of mediation is that when we try to introduce a third variable in between two other constructs or two variables. So those two variables are known as independent and dependent variable, and when we are trying to introduce another variable, that will be called as mediator variable. So for a variable to qualify as a potential mediator, now here comes the eligibility. In order to introduce a variable, we cannot introduce any variable in between two constructs and then we are going to call it mediator. No, there are certain eligibility criteria. Okay, so I was reading somewhere and then I came across as to what could be the eligibility criteria to become a mediator variable, to become a mediator. So it says that the obvious outcome of the independent variable obvious outcome of the independent variable will become a part of the uh, mediator. Okay, so at times we are in a fix, we are in a dilemma as to whether a particular variable should be treated as mediator or whether the variable should be treated as moderator. We are in a fix. So many of the researchers, they have used gender as moderator, but we have never seen gender being used as mediator. We have seen many researchers, they have actually used demographic profiles, income, and other educational and other say variables as moderators. Even geographical locations has been used as moderators. But we have never seen any such kind of variables that has been used as mediator. So one of the eligibility criteria for selecting mediator is that it should be the obvious outcome of the independent variable, which we call as exogenous variable. So for a variable to qualify as a potential mediator, it must be located between the predictor and the outcome. According to the theory, the predictor must precede the mediator in some clear manner. In some clear manner. So we must introduce the third variable, which is called as mediator, in between the outcome and the predictor. Now, predictor is the exogenous, the outcome would be the endogenous. There must be some relationship. Unlike the moderator, wherein we actually use gender as a moderator. So mediating effects highlight the distinction between the direct effect and indirect effects. Now, these two terms have already been discussed when I was starting the presentation. Now, direct effect is what? Now, direct effect is when we try to find out the relationship between independent variable and the dependent variable. When we try to establish a relationship between these two, this will be called as direct. Direct is something wherein we do not need any via, any medium. And indirect effects is wherein we have actually introduced mediator. We have a medium in between the independent variable and the dependent variable. So the moment we introduce anything in between independent variable and dependent variable, having an objective, logical, there must be some logic behind introducing the mediator variable. So that would be called as indirect effect. So mediating effect highlights the distinction between, the difference between what? Between the direct and the indirect effects. Later part of the PPT, we will see that how these things are being calculated and how these things are being dealt. So I'm just trying to give you an understanding of the conceptual theory of mediation. So direct effects. Now here we have already understood what direct effects are. The relationship between two constructs. One is independent and the other one is the dependent. So direct effects are the relationship linking two constructs with a single arrow. Single arrow will be there. How? Here we have independent variable, and here we have dependent variable, and then there is single arrow in between. However, indirect effects are those relationships that involve a sequence of relationships. Now, this is important. A sequence, a series of relationships would be there. So direct effect, only single arrow, single relationship. But when we involve when the moment we introduce mediator, so obviously with the introduction of an additional variable will bring in a series of relationships. Okay, how? Let's see. That involve a sequence of relationships with at least one intervening constructs involved. So this is the example that has been given in Baron and Kenny. So here we have K. K is an independent variable. Here we have E. E is dependent variable. Now let's see what happens. Thus, an indirect effect is a sequence of two or more direct effects, compound effects, and is represented usually by multiple arrows. So this is the mediator variable. This is mediator. And then we will have a series of relationship. The following diagram shows both a direct effect. Direct effect is what? K to E. K to E. This is direct effect. And indirect effect of K on E. in the form of K to M and M to E. K to M and M to E, which means that we will include A path and this B path. The indirect effect K to M, M to E represents the mediating effect of construct M on the relationship between K and E. From a theoretical perspective, the most common application of mediation is to explain why a relationship, why. From a theoretical perspective, let's repeat this thing. From a theoretical perspective, the most common application of mediation is, the most common application of mediation is to explain what? Why a relationship between two constructs exists. Why these two, say here, why K influences E. If there is certain type of relationships, then why that relationship exists? This could be answered on the basis of the mediator that we have actually introduced into the model. So many a times I have seen some of the research scholars and students, they try to avoid mediators and moderators from their model because it creates complications. Okay, but here it says that if any relationship that exists between independent and dependent variable, that is basically explained by the introduction of the mediation, because mediator tries to answer as to why some sort of relationship exists between independent and dependent variable. And then we see that we may observe a relationship between constructs, that is K and E. This is what I was trying to say, that there must be some sort of relationship between K and E. Obviously, there must be some relationship between K and E, and then, but we may observe relationship between constructs K and E, but not know why it exists. Why there is such kind of relationship. So we can then posit some explanation in terms of an intervening or facilitating variable, which operates to take the inputs from K, and then translate them into the output, that is E. So what does it say? It says, yes, okay. So it says that, yeah, why it exists. So we are actually trying to figure it out as to why there is some sort of relationship between K and E, and how this could be explained with the introduction of M. But again, I'm saying that introduction of mediator into the model should have certain underpinning background, must have some logic behind the introduction of mediation, because one of the books says that this should be the obvious outcome of the independent variable. Then probably it is going to explain as to why say there is some sort of relationship between independent and dependent. So when we are interested into why a relationship between two different constructs, one is independent and one is dependent, so why there is a relationship exists, then that could be explained with the help of mediation. Okay, and how it is done? It is done like K mediator takes inputs from K, like here. So the moment we introduce mediator here, it is going to take inputs from K. It will take inputs from K, that is A path, and then it will translate them into E, that is the B path. This is what is being said here, that which operates to takes the inputs from K, that is independent variable. Mediator is going to take inputs from K, and then it is going to translate them into the output. Output is nothing but here we have the dependent variable is E. Okay, so as such, the mediator, that is M, facilitates and explains why. It explains why the relationship between the two original constructs exists. It explains why the relationship between two original constructs, that is independent variable and dependent variable, it exists. Before taking up the example, I hope the conceptual understanding is okay. Is it fine? Okay. So let's take an example. Like here we have the construct K in the previous model. If we go and refer to the same model, so here the construct K could be students' intelligence, and E, that is the dependent variable, could be classroom performance. So obviously, a student's intelligence is somewhere related to the classroom performance. So even if we don't have any mediator, there will be certain type of relationship, certain level of relationships. huh? It could be moderate, it could be low, it could be high, but there will be some sort of relationships. But how intelligence is being transformed into classroom performance is a matter of uh, exploration. How students' intelligence is being transformed into classroom performance, that is a matter of exploration. That is a matter of research. So can we simply say that how students translate their intelligence into performance? So we may find that sometimes a student exhibits high intelligence. He may have high intelligence, but does not always perform well. Classroom performance. So perform well, here we are referring to E, that is dependent variable, and high intelligence, that is K. So K, let's go back to the same model. So K, intelligence, student's intelligence, E, classroom performance. So we are assuming that at times we see that a student has high intelligence score, but his performance in classroom is quite moderate or is not well, but does not always perform well. Moreover, some students with lower intelligence scores perform extremely well. Both ways it is happening. Like when we have high intelligence, so performance could be low. When we have low intelligence, so at times the same set of students, they may perform well in their classrooms. So is there some other process going on that translates student intelligence into actual classroom performance? So these two say variables, that is intelligence and classroom performance, are limited in their explanations. They fail to explain the whole story as to what is happening at the back of these two variables. So at that point of time, we need to find out as to can we introduce some additional variables as mediator, so that we can explain in a better way as to why or how intelligence is being transformed into classroom performance. So the intervening process in the is the mediating effect. So now we need something in between these two variables, because these two variables in isolation are not enough, are not sufficient to explain the answer as to why at times with high students with high intelligence, they perform poorly, and at a different point of time, students with lower intelligence, they perform extremely well. Why? So in order to explain this thing, we need one or few more variables that could be intervening, that is going to fall in between these independent and dependent variable. In this case, we could propose a construct termed as study effectiveness. Study effectiveness. Study effectiveness has been defined as the ability of the students to focus their efforts on their classwork, to organize their class related and other activities, to provide them with sufficient time to complete their homework and other good study habits. Once again, we are actually trying to introduce another variable in order to explain why of the previous problem that we have seen, that how intelligence is being transformed into or translate into the classroom performance. And here we are trying to introduce the third variable or an additional variable which is called as mediator, and it is termed as study effectiveness, which has been defined as the ability of students to focus their efforts on their classwork, to focus their efforts on their classwork, organize their class related and other activities to provide them with sufficient time to complete their homework and other good study habits. Now let's understand, if a student is intelligent, this quality, study effectiveness, this quality may encourage the student to study longer and better, which could result in higher classroom performance. So in such a case, the significant correlation between K and E would be explained by with the help of KME. M is study effectiveness here in the sequence of relationship. Okay. So we could then say that study effectiveness mediates the relationship between students' intelligence and classroom performance. Okay, so that was the backdrop of mediation. We saw the example as well, and yeah, the concept moderator mediator variable distinction in social psychological research. This was actually conceptualized, strategized, and the testing for mediation was actually given by one of the seminal work of Barron and Kenny in the year 1986. 1986. So they gave this idea how to test mediation. Okay, and you will see that this is one of the most cited, one of the highly cited work in the field of moderator and mediator. Very highly cited. Okay, so here we see that this is direct effect testing for mediation. Here we have direct effect x to y. X is here the exogenous variable, y the endogenous variable, and then we are trying to establish a relationship between these two variables. So that will be called as direct relationship. And then we have indirect effect, wherein we have already introduced a mediator variable. And then we will have a series of relationships. So Barron and Kenny, they have suggested four steps. So in step one, what we are going to do is that since we know what we have independent variable, we have a dependent variable, then we are going to establish a relationship between these two, and that path will be known as C. In the next step, we are going to establish a relationship between X and M, and that path will be known as A. And third step would be like M to Y. Step 2 was between independent to mediator. Now in step 3, from mediator to dependent variable, and then that path will be uh, known as B path. And again, in the presence of mediator, this relationship will be tested, and that will be known as C hash. So how, if we get some certain results, then how we are going to interpret them? So variations in levels of the independent variables significantly account for variations in the mediator, that is path A. Variations in the level of independent variable. This is what actually here we have said. Yeah, yeah, here we said that, which operates to takes the inputs from K. Mediator, it takes inputs from K and then translate them into output. So it takes inputs from K and it translate them into output. So yeah. So variation in levels of the independent variables significantly account for variations in the presumed mediator, that is path A. Next, variations in the mediator. Variations in the mediator. Path A is done. Now we are moving towards path B. So variations in the mediator significantly account for variations in the dependent variable. And then when paths A and B are controlled, a previously significant relationship between the independent and dependent variables is no longer significant, with the strongest demonstration of mediation occurring when path when path C is zero. When path C is zero, we are saying that this one, direct effect. So if it happens to be zero, uh, if it happens to be zero, in with the introduction of M, if we got the result and we see that it becomes zero, then in that case we can say that this is the case of full mediation. When path C is reduced to zero, we have a strong evidence for single dominant mediator. Again, C, we are talking about C. When path C is reduced to zero, we have strong evidence for a single dominant mediator. But if the residual path C is not zero, this indicates the operation of multiple mediating factors. In that case, we can say that it could be a case of partial mediation. So from a theoretical perspective, a significant reduction demonstrates that given mediator is indeed potent, albeit not both a necessary and sufficient condition for an effect to occur. So even if it doesn't becomes zero, still we can draw certain conclusions, and that conclusion could be that okay, so after the introduction of mediation, it is although it is partially working, still there could be other variables that could be introduced as mediator, and probably they are going to explain the whole relationship in a better way. So if let's have a look at some of the research papers, how they actually present uh, the mediation in their research papers. Is it visible?
No, the paper is not visible.
I hope not
Yeah,
visible.
it's fine now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's visible.
Here in this paper, see, the whole model has been divided into two. One as a structural model, second as mediation model. Although this could have been run into the same software, and then we could have got the whole result of both a structural as well mediation model. But somehow two different softwares or more softwares have been used in order to derive at the the outcome of mediation and the structural. So let's have a look as to how they have shown this is a structural model. Yeah. So this is the direct relationship as we have seen in our PPT. This one. So this is direct relationship, and when we introduce here, we have we can see that there are two mediators. So the moment we introduce mediating variable, so yeah, again we will have A, we will have B, we will have C dash. Here we have A, we have B, here we have A, so we can call it A1, we can call it A2, we can call it B1, we can call it B2, and then we have C dash. And then since they have used PLS, so yeah, so since they have used PLS to test mediation, so for that reason they have gone for LLCI, ULCI, and some other things. But the concept remains same. The concept remains same that we, as Baron and Kenny has said, that first we need to find out the step one in part C, that is direct relationship. Then we are going to introduce mediator variable, and then we need to go to all other parts, A, B, and C dash. Now, coming to the conceptual understanding of moderation, uh, if mediation, if it helps in understanding as to why relationship between two variables exist. Okay, so moderation actually it helps in other understanding. Like most effects that scientists study are contingent on one thing or another. An effect may be large for women and small for men. Gender, when we are going to use gender as moderator, so we try to find out whether both the categories have different say influence or not, or positive among certain types of people and negative among other types, or zero for one category of stimuli but not zero for another category of stimuli. Again, an effect may be large. An effect may be large for women and small for men, or positive among certain types of people and negative among other types, or zero for one category but not zero for another category. So when an investigator seeks to determine whether a certain variable influences or is related to the size of one variable's effect on another, a moderation analysis is the proper analytical strategy. In a simple way, an independent variable that changes the nature of the relationship, an independent variable that changes the nature of the relationship between exogenous and endogenous variables is called as moderator. So moderator, it has been defined as an independent variable that basically helps in changing the nature of the relationship. So earlier, when we were studying mediation, so at that point of time, we understood that mediators helps us in understanding as to why this type of relationship exists. It tries to answer why. Here we can say see the changes in the nature of the relationship. Positive becomes negative, negative becomes positive, low becomes high, high becomes low. So an independent variable that changes the nature of the relationship between exogenous and endogenous variables. For example, if a researcher examined the relationship between gender and math performance, a significant difference might emerge. Okay.
Excuse me,
So
sir.
yeah,
Sir, in this example between gender and maths performance, which one is the moderator here?
gender.
And gender is also the independent variable.
No, 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 no. That is not the case.
Okay.
Yeah. However, if teaching style were taken into the account, such that those who learn math by applied hands-on methods perform better than those who learn with traditional lecture styles, regardless of gender, one could say that teaching style was a moderator of the relationship between. Yes, yes, yes. You are right. Gender could be called as independent. Yes, sorry. So the teaching style will be called as moderator, also called as moderating variable. So the effect that occurs when a third variable changes the nature of the relationship. The effect, now here we are focusing upon the moderating effect. Moderating effect is what? The effect that occurs when a third variable means the moderator, the moment we are introducing a moderator. So the effect that occurs when a third variable changes the nature of the relationship, changes the nature of the relationship between a predictor, that is the exogenous variable, and an outcome, that is an endogenous variable. So the moment we introduce a third variable, and if it changes the nature of the relationship between a predictor and an outcome, that makes moderating effect. For example, SEM can be used to assess whether a predicted association between a quantitative skill and performance fits equally well across different teaching style groups or not. Quantitative skill and performance fits equally well across different teaching styles. That is, if lecture based versus hands on learning. So if the prediction is different across the two groups, then teaching style is said to have produced a moderating effect. Okay. So again, Baron and Kenny, they have said that X, this is the exogenous variable, Y we have this is endogenous variable, and then moderator. So while referring to the same book, wherein I tried to find out what could be the eligibility criteria to become a mediating variable. So they have said the second qualification is that the moderation, the mediation and moderation, that mediation involves itself in between. So it takes inputs from X and it translates to Y. In case of mediation, the variables involves itself into the relationship. So it takes inputs from X and it translates it into Y. However, the moderator, the moderating variable, it stands aside and it tries to influence the relationship. Okay, so let's take the example of moderation. In case of moderation, we can see that environmental orientation. Environmental orientation here, it is referred to as a degree of an individual's commitment towards environmental safety. Again, environmental orientation is referred to as a degree of an individual's commitment towards environmental safety. And then we have a endogenous variable, which is known as green apparel buying behavior. Okay, so here we have an assumption that okay, those people who have higher degree of commitment towards saving environment, so probably they will be more involved into buying environment friendly products. Those, once again, those people who have higher degree of commitment towards saving the environment, they are more likely to uh, purchase, say, or depict uh, green buying behavior. But then, what could be the role of monetary incentives? We have introduced monetary incentives. Why? Because it was found that although people have environmental orientation towards safety of environment, yet that has not been translated into the actual purchase. So I will take the example of one of the research papers that has been recently published. So if we are going to follow Baron and Kenny, then we are going to have three different relationships. How? First, we have the independent variable, then we have with the moderator, and then we will take interaction effect, and then we are going to merge it into one, these two, that is independent and the moderator. So this one, this is independent variable, one relationship. This is moderator. Individually, they are going to test moderator and the dependent variable. And in third, this is important because here we have an interaction effect. What we did is that we have multiplied uh, the independent variable with the moderator. This is the interaction effect, and then we will try to find out the influence of the interaction effect on the uh, dependent variable. So Baron and Kenny, they have said that, okay, we are going to test it in three different steps. First, we are going for the independent to dependent. Then we are going to test the moderator. And then in third stage, we are going to take an interaction effect. That's true on the dependent variable. Uh, let's see some of the examples, and then we are going to do something on SPSS.
I think Padma Mishra want to ask some question. She has raised her hand.
Okay.
Professor Adil, could you please?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so here if we take a look at this model, which was recently published in one of the journal, so we can see that here a number of relationships are there, and in between the researchers, they have used service quality as moderator, and then they have tried to test it on different say all the in fact all the relationships. Similarly, we have another research paper. So as I said earlier, that recently, if you say scan through some of the papers, you will realize that most of the papers either they have used mediation or moderation or even both. Yeah, here. So in the next slides, we are going to take the example of environmental knowledge and environment and monetary incentives. So these two moderators are there. We have environmental orientation, and then we have green apparel buying behavior. Green apparel buying behavior as dependent variable. We have environmental orientation as independent variable, and then we have moderator in between, two different moderators. In fact, one is environmental knowledge and one is the monetary incentives. Now, next we are going to see as to how we can actually how we can actually test moderation effect in MOS. Yes. So so in SPSS, uh, yeah. So this is environmental orientation. We have this is independent variable, just for the sake of understanding. Independent variable. This is our dependent variable. Yeah. Environmental knowledge, moderator. Moderator say 1, and then we have here moderator 2, monetary incentives, and then importantly we need to have interaction effect. How can we do this? So the formula says that okay, so that we are going to merge both moderator and the independent variable. So similarly, what we are going to do is that we are going to use transform, then compute variable. Yeah, and then although I have already computed them here, that is mi and eo. Eo was our independent variable, mi was moderator. Then similarly, eo is independent variable, ek is moderator 1. So just for the sake of our understanding, I will again go and uh, compute the variables. So let's name it like mi uh, interaction underscore mi or EO. Okay, so we have this independent variable. We are going to take it here, multiply. We are going to take mi. This is moderator where we are going to take it and then click OK. We got this. This is interaction MIEO. We already have this one, MI underscore EO. Similarly, we can compute the second one also. Transform, compute, interaction. Then we have next one is EK, underscore, and our independent variable is EO, environmental orientation. So again, independent variable, this one, multiply with EK. Yeah, this one, moderator. Press OK. We got this one. We got it. So once we have done this, then we will go to MOS. MOS. So I have already drawn those things. So let me remove, because I'm going to use similar, the same data sheet. So let me clear it. Now, this is our dependent variable. We will have to draw all the variables here. So this is dependent variable, environmental orientation. First, let's revisit the PPT once more. Okay, so this is dependent variable. We need to find out the independent relationship, then with the moderator, and then with the interaction. See here, we have dependent variable, we have independent variable. Environmental orientation was the independent variable here. Environmental orientation is independent, we have dependent, and then we have two moderators. So here, and then moderators, monetary incentives, environmental knowledge. And here comes in picture the moderation, the interaction effect. MI and EO, that is moderator 1 and the independent variable, then we moderator 2 and the independent variable. And then we are going to run it. And ultimately, directly we will go to the estimates. And in estimates, we will get standardized regression weights and unstandardized regression weights. So ultimately, we have to look for this one and not for this one. So we will have to look for the unstandardized regression weights. And then we will go for the relationships. Like here, we have EO variable, that is our independent variable to dependent variable, and we see that P is significant. Then next, we can see that monetary incentives to dependent variable, it is also significant. And next is the environmental knowledge. And when it goes to dependent variable, it is non-significant, not significant. And ultimately, when we check out the interaction effect between monetary incentives and say environmental orientation, that is independent variable, the interaction effect of moderator 1. So ultimately, that is also significant. Moderator 2, the interaction effect of moderator 2, it is found to be not significant. Now, how to interpret all these things? We will have to go back to the PPT. Yeah. Now let's have a look at the result. So it says that when your exogenous variable is significant, so my exogenous variable was environmental orientation. Here, see, this is environmental orientation, which is exogenous variable, the endogenous variable, and the moderators. So when exogenous variable is significant. It says that when exogenous variable is significant, so let's have a look at the result. Exogenous variable, that is independent variable on dependent variable. So ultimately this is significant. So yes, it is significant. Now let's have a look at the moderator. So let's check it out. Moderator is mi variable to dependent variable. So ultimately it is significant. So moderator says that yes, it is also significant. Now let's have a look at interaction effect. So interaction effect of mi, because this was mi, so obviously we will look for the interaction effect of monetary incentives. So monetary incentives and environmental orientation, the interaction effect, and then we will see yes, it is also significant. So significant. So when these three are significant, so moderation effect will be yes. So it is acting as a moderator. So there is a moderation effect of monetary incentives. Next, we will see that yeah. So this is our independent variable. This is dependent variable, and yes, it is significant. Yes, it is significant. Yeah. Then we will try to find out about environmental knowledge (EK), whether this moderator is significant or not. So it is not significant. It is not significant. So the exogenous variable is significant. The moderator is not significant. Now let's have a look at the interaction effect, the environmental knowledge, and our independent variable, that is environmental orientation. And this is also not significant. Not significant. So ultimately, the answer, whether there is a moderation effect or not, so the answer is no. So this is how we try to find out whether there is a moderation effect or not. On what basis? We try to find out the outcome of the exogenous variable, the moderators and interactions, and ultimately uh, we can say that yes, there is a moderation effect or there is an absence of moderation effect. Now, we generally go one step ahead of this thing, and then what we do is that let's have a look at the same how it has been reported in papers. Since they have used uh, some PLS methods, some other methods, so they got that environmental knowledge, all their relationships are standing as I mean they are acting as moderator, and those values have come significant. In case of monetary incentives, the one of the variable, that is uh, COGABB, probably they might have some other variables here. So that is not significant. Rest of their values are significant. So this is how it is being reported in case of paper. And then we go one step ahead of this, and then we try to formulate this chart. This chart, it explains, yeah, environmental orientation, independent variable. This is the dependent variable, and then the moderator. So what we have done here is that when we try to develop this chart using SPSS, since the data was on continuous data, so it need to be transformed into say uh, what you call into two categories, either in low or and high. So when we go for the conversion of such data, so we use mean. So if any values falling below mean, that will be called as low. Any values going up above the mean, then that will be termed as high. And then we can use those values in to generate data. This actually figure in SPSS. Now, how to understand this thing? Then when the consumers have low environmental orientation, that is when they are low in their commitments towards saving the environment, so they may not have no the they have low likelihood of buying green apparel uh, per se. But when the moment when consumer they are on high environmental orientation, means that they have high commitments towards say saving the environment. So, and if we give them high monetary incentives, see the gap is quite is increasing between the low and high. So at the moment we are moving from low to high environmental orientation, this gap is slightly started increasing. So it simply means that the more the monetary incentives is being given. Monetary incentives is like when we start offering people to that if you buy environment friendly products, then we are going to offer you certain discounts or certain form of coupons which you can use on your future purchases, something like that. So once the marketers they start giving some sort of monetary incentives, so that is going to actually reflect into buying say green apparel. So so the next step would always be right after understanding whether there is a significant relationship, yeah, whether moderation is significant or not, or whether after doing this, we need to go to the generation of this figure also. So and yeah, recently we have seen that a number of reviewers they are also suggesting, they are emphasizing upon that you should not come up with a linear model, rather complicate your model with the help of some mediators and moderators. Recently, I can share with you some of the comments that have been received, wherein the reviewers they have in fact suggested that why not you go for the test of moderation on all the relationships. So in fact, reviewers they are more interested into identifying as to why uh, people or researchers they are, I mean, shying away from or running away from using of moderators and mediators. And let me, yeah, see this comment. Service quality can be a moderator in all the relationships. One of the suggestions from the reviewer was like it could be used as a moderator on all the relationships. So previously researchers they might have used it as on one or few relationships. So they have suggested that why don't you go for this one, service quality on all the relationships, be it H1, H2, H3, H4, H4, and so on and so forth. So this is high time when people should start looking forward towards the use of mediation and moderation into their models. Yeah. Yeah, any queries?
Anyone who is having any kind of query? I don't think Dr. Adil they are having any kind of query.
Okay. Okay, then Dr. Asud.
Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay. Personally, I just actually missed it. You use that SPSS thing for that to just calculate that interaction wala thing. I just missed it. There was something
I,
called
yeah.
to check that mediation thing. Use
Mediation.
yeah, multiplied something with something actually. I just missed that part.
Oh, that was actually part of moderation. In moderation, what we do is actually is that we try to have an interaction effect of moderator along with the moderator that we have introduced. So at uh, say in step one, first we go for the say test between independent and dependent. In the second step, what we do is that we are going to individually test the moderator vis-a-vis with the dependent variable. And in the third step, we go for the interaction effect. The interaction effect is nothing but the multiplication between the independent and the moderator variable. So here in the third step, what we do is that we go for the interaction effect with the dependent variable.
Okay, then we keep it with the SPSS thing, then we just transform it to a AMOS, right?
Yeah, yeah, yep,
And there we just do the same thing as we do for CFA and SEM.
exactly.
Just actually, I just saw that SEM wala part, but I missed that
No
SPSS
issue.
wala. So, sir, who is this?
Shall I ask you one question? I'm Dr.
Yeah,
Sheena.
yeah,
Sir,
please.
I have a doubt when you are interpreting that mediation and moderation. For
Yeah.
articles and all, how will you write that?
How should we write it?
Yes, sir. The results.
The
The
results that
mediation, the
yeah,
mediation results. Now, after getting the result, now you have to interpret it, right? So how will
exactly,
you write
exactly.
that for articles?
So while writing it into the article, generally we say that let's suppose that X acts as a mediator. Then we try to come up with some logical reasoning as to why we believe that X is acting as a mediator. So the software has done its part, that it has given it certain values which is quite significant, or which could be it could be partial mediation, it could be full mediation, but then we need to support it through logical understanding as to why this is happening in our own context, because at times we feel that this could be sample specific. So today I might have collected data from say Delhi and in around NRC, NCR, and probably this might have emerged as a mediator in this sample. But the moment we are going to apply it into some other countries, some other context, so probably this may not be the results. So we may need to support it through some logical and reasoning as to why we feel that this particular variable is acting as a mediator.
Yeah, I have one more doubt, sir. So
Yeah.
how will you write that direct effect, indirect effect, and total effect for this article? So straight away you are copying that element into that.
Yeah. There are different ways of doing so. At times journals they basically ask for that we should produce the results in say discussion part rather than presenting it in a tabular form. At times they also ask for the tabulation of those results. So what we generally do is that we take we copy those say outcomes, the results from the SPSS or any software that we generally use, and then we paste it over here. That's too in a bit modified form. So people are generally now these days people are basically working on PLS based SEM. So that reporting is a bit different from what we actually use in MOS. So nevertheless, the crux remains the same, that we need to have sound logical, say either theoretical support, or we should have some support so that we can convince the reviewers that no, this could be the reason, these could be the reasons for a particular variable to act as a mediator in our case. This may not be the case, even if the same, say, variable is being used in Indian context in some other industries. So maybe or may not, we may not get the same result. So we need some logical, say, reasoning as to why this is happening in our case.
Okay. Sir, one more doubt. Yeah. Sir, is there any difference in interpreting that AMOS mediation moderation with process macros mediation moderation process?
In case of process, you will generally get LLCI, ULCI. I have not done much work on process, but what I have a fair understanding of process is that generally we get certain values like ULCI, LLCI, something like that, and then if zero is not falling in between, then probably we can call that yes, there is some sort of mediation. Unlike here, we generally reject or accept moderation on the basis of significance value, uh, something like that. So we may have different softwares, but results would be more close to each other. So ultimately, the reportings in the articles would be more or less on the basis of, if like, even if we get significant mediation in case of MOS, or be it in case of process, ultimately that needs some logical reasoning to support our mediator. That's the basic crux of the thing. That software has done its job. That yes, X is influencing Y. But why do you think that it is influencing Y?
Okay.
Why your case is, yeah, why your case is so peculiar that X is influencing Y? No?
Yeah.
So that need to be explained in properly. That's to properly in the article, because those people, readers, reviewers, editor in chief, they are more interested into finding as to why this is happening. They are not interested into how it has happened. They are more interested into why it is happening. That's the case.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else who would like to ask any kind of question? Dr. Mohammed Adil? Okay, no issue. So, Dr.
So, Dr. Reena, can you conclude the session?
Yeah, sure, sir.
Please.
I thank Dr. Adil for giving us such a provoking and enlightening session on moderation and mediation. I understand this is a little bit technical in nature, and by virtue of attending more, conferences, or by reading more papers, we would be able to understand the difference more clearly. But giving us the basics and understanding the difference between moderation and mediation, I think sir has really helped us to give us such an enlightening session on that topic. So I thank Dr. Adil once again on behalf of the team for sharing his valuable thoughts with us. And I thank all the participants also. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Reena. Feedback is available with the chat box.
Okay. Thank you, Asad. Thank you, Dr. Jamshed.
Thanks a
Thanks
lot,
a lot.
Dr. Mohammed Adil.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
It's a request to all the participants. Please find attached the link actually in the chat box. Please try to fill it as soon as possible because we have to close the link also. So even if you miss, please try to ask it, say within 10 minutes. But yes, I have missed the feedback.